Hey guys, welcome back to Custom Hearthstone Concepts, where today we have a video that's been a long time coming. So as I've commented in previous Custom Hearthstone Concepts videos, there's kind of this archetype in Mage of a Summoner Mage, where they have a lot of spells and effects that allow them to generate minions either directly onto the board, or place them in their hand and then play them. And in this video, that's what we're going to be looking at. We're calling it just Summoner Mage, but it refers to minions made by spells. And before we get into the video, I will clarify even further than that, because I've seen some comments and there's a lot of confusion on this topic, and I understand it. It's a bit more of a complicated one, but minions made by spells refers to any minion created by a spell, however directly or indirectly. So a lot of spells summon minions straight to the board, such as Firelands Portal and Mirror Image, and even, Mirror Entity, the Secret. All of those count as summoning a minion off of a spell. However, in the same vein, stuff like Unstable Portal or Simulacrum, stuff that adds a minion to your hand, also counts as that. It creates the minion, and then when you play that, that is summoning a minion that was made by a spell. I've seen a lot of confusion with that, and there's going to be some specifics of what made what and how all of that plays out in this video. So I just want to make sure that we're on the same page going into that as to what we're actually talking about. All of that being said, I do have only a couple of cards for this video that I feel really turned out well, but it's still a video that I'm super excited about because this is a really cool concept, and yeah, let's go ahead and get into it and see what we've got for today. Ready? So to start things off, we have something of the most unique card that I made here. The thing is, though, this kind of feeds into how a lot of how the other cards function. So what we have is the 4-mana, 4/4 Leyline Feeder, which has the text, if this was made by a spell, gain +2 attack, +4 health, and taunt. So instead of being a 4/4, it becomes a 4-mana 6/8 with taunt. Now there's a couple of different ways you could trigger that. You could play it and then use Molten Reflections to copy it. If it's the lowest cost minion in your hand, you can use Simulacrum to create a copy of it while it's in your hand and then play that. And overall, I think this is a great example of kind of working with that archetype and creating something interesting. Yet another interesting example of that would be the new secret, Splitting Image, which is in Rastakan's Rumble. It's a secret. When one of your minions is attacked, summon a copy of it. And so that would be an interesting one, because you could play this as a 4/4 with that secret, and then they attack it, and it summons the full-on 6/8 taunt because it's created by that spell. That being said, there is also the side of things of if this gets generated by a random effect, and that could be very frustrating. But I feel like you kind of got to take that in stride with Hearthstone. Yes, none of us would want to play a game where an opponent plays or coins out Unstable Portal and then on turn 2 plays a 6/8 taunt. That sounds infuriating, but that's kind of a part of what Hearthstone is. You do have cards like Earth and Elemental, which you can get off of, Firelands Portal, and there's some frustrations like that in Hearthstone, so I think that's just part of what would have to happen in order to have a card like this in the game. And overall, I do think this is a very unique look on that, and just kind of shows how much missing potential there is with this type of Summoner Mage. The next card we have is somewhat more generic, but it is kind of necessary to look at alongside some of the cards we're going to be looking at in the future of the video here. So what we have is Fiery Defense. It's 3 mana, summon 3 1/2 Flame Elementals, and give them Taunt, so it's just kind of like a mini board of taunts. And yes, it's very generic, but the thing is, stuff like this could be powerful. There's several cards in this video that trigger each time you summon a minion that was created by a spell, and this would trigger those types of effects 3 times. So I feel like if they were going to push an archetype like that, we would need a card like this. Above and beyond that, though, a card like this is interesting because it has application outside of that specific deck, and I think that's what you see with a lot of these types of cards. Molten Reflections and Simulacrum in particular see a lot of play despite there being no direct synergy with minions made by spells, because they're just good cards. You can use them in other types of decks. And I think this would be a very similar card where it's just a good early game defense, and maybe if you had a minion-based mage somewhere down the line, I don't know how that would work, but, you know, this would definitely be in there, especially if it was an elemental deck. Overall, though, yes, it's a very generic card, but I think it's worth noting that if we were to have a fully fledged expansion that focused on Summoner Mage as an archetype, we would need a card like this that would just kind of fill up your board with a bit of cannon fodder. So, next up we have Cosmic Alignment, which is a 5-mana spell that reads, choose a friendly minion, summon 1 copy of it, which is just a worse Molten Reflections. However, it then reads improved by spell damage, and that is the number of copies that are summoned. So, this card is very fun to theorycraft with, in my opinion. Now, my go-to when looking at this card would be Cosmic Anomaly, the 4-mana, 4/3 spell damage 2 minion. Because what you could do is you play this on turn 10, you play that minion, Cosmic Alignment on it, and that summons a total of 4 of those, and then you have any spell, you know, any 1-mana spell with +8 spell damage. I think that could be really fun. Although, I think we all know what the dream is, and that would be Malygos. If you do find a way to play this on Malygos, you are able to fill your entire board with a total of 7 Malygos, because it summons 1, and then it's +5 spell damage from the Malygos, for a total of 7. And that, I think, would be absolutely hilarious and would lead to some amazing highlights and crazy decks. The thing with this card is, though, a lot of the one-turn kill combos and crazy stuff that I was looking at, you can do better with other cards. So I think this would be a fantastic, like, meme card, and I absolutely would want to mess around with it a ton, but I don't think it's game-breaking by any means. So that's why I think this would be a wonderful card to have in Hearthstone. And first of all, we have the 4-mana 3/2 Rift Replicator, which I like the alliteration on that one, but which also reads, whenever you summon a minion created by a spell, summon a copy of it. Now, this card is very simple, but there's a lot of interesting application of it. You have cards like Fiery Defense, which I showed earlier, as well as Mirror Image, both of which are very cheap spells that summon several minions, and this would duplicate and this card would, of course, double their output, so Mirror Image would summon 4 taunt minions, and Fiery Defense would fill your board with 6 taunt minions, and I think there is some application there. This is where we get into the nitty-gritties, though, because it is interesting, and it's something to keep in mind, that this card in particular has anti-synergy with Leyline Feeder. Because it creates the copy of it, that copy is no longer made by a spell, so even if you play a Leyline Feeder from hand that was created by a spell, that one is fully buffed up, and then this one summons just a 4/4 copy of it. It's still not bad, but it's far from good, and I think that there's some interesting anti-synergy to explore there, and some semantics to get into, and honestly, that's the type of stuff that I love to look at in Hearthstone, those types of very specific interactions. I think this archetype would benefit a lot from giant decks and focusing on big, huge 8/8 minions and summoning a ton of them. And you'll see that more with this last card that I'm going to show, but with this card in particular, you could get a giant really cheap, and then you could Simulacrum it and play the copy along with this and get an extra giant. And then, of course, you Molten Image the giants, and you just kind of keep creating more and more giants. And I think there is room for a giant board flood mage with a card like this, and I think that'd be an interesting archetype to explore. And finally, I think you guys know by now that I like to make a legendary card, if at all possible, for the archetype. And we have Queen Azshara for this, which she's got a lot of different representation. For this, we're going with an older version of her, slash younger in years, but older in lore, where she opened massive portals to other worlds and was this crazy powerful mage, so I think that fits perfectly. And specifically, she has Battle Cry, summon all friendly minions created by spells that died this game. So this is where we come back to that giant archetype that we were talking about earlier, and this is kind of what I'm seeing, where you use, you know, Simulacrum and Molten Reflections, and maybe even like Splitting Image and stuff, to summon a ton of different giants off of just a couple in your hand and off of spells. And then you play Queen Ishara, and you fill up your board with these massive 8/8 giants, and I think that could be a pretty powerful deck. Overall, balance-wise, I just kind of put her at a 9-mana 5/5. I think that's balanced compared to like N'Zoth and Talanji. But this type of card in particular, you'd really want to playtest a lot and really analyze what is possible with it and where things can go. I think this type of archetype, honestly, with how much there is, does suffer a bit from the Shutterwalk treatment, that it is very interesting in concept, but there is the potential to create something deadly. That being said, because it's a battle cry and it's a summon, I don't think it would be anywhere near as oppressive, and I think that there is enough counterplay to keep it as an interesting archetype, less so than an oppressive, endless Shutterwalk type of deck. And the reason that I say it's open-ended is when you think about the cards and options that Mage has accessible, you could effectively make Queen Ishara summon back any set of specific minions that you so choose. So there is even the potential there for a, you know, charged Devilosaur deck, where you duplicate and play your charged Devilosaurs, but that would be a much harder deck to run with what options you have available there. Overall though, again, with these videos, I try to create a conversation much more than create a balanced set of cards, and I would definitely be open to hear what you guys have to say about these cards. I personally think this is a very interesting and unexplored part of the game, and I'd love to see more of it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. And before I go, I do have some major announcements coming up, so stay tuned for that. But in particular, going into 2019, we are going to be focusing much more on community-driven Hearthstone videos. So all the cards in this video were made by me, but in the future we're going to be doing a lot more where it's stuff made by you guys, made by the community. If you want to get involved with that, you will need to be a part of the Discord server, which I'll leave a link to in the description and probably in a pinned comment. But above and beyond that, if you are interested in getting involved, I'm actually going to be starting a new competition for the next video as of today, as of the release of this video. So if you go and check out Discord, you should see 2 new channels that people are engaging in, and the theme of the video is going to be Weapon Hunter. So hunter cards that synergize with and help you with weapons, or just good hunter weapons. A thought in particular is that with, you know, like the immune status, and with the, or immune while attacking, sorry, and with stuff like the Eagle Horn Bow and its durability, I think that there's a lot of like endurance focus you could have on hunter weapons, but I really want you guys to get creative with it, and I left it very open-ended on purpose. I want to see your guys' take on what a weapon hunter archetype would be. At any rate, all that being said, I do hope you guys enjoyed this particular video, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Toodles.